Hi guys, it's Alan. Make sure that this, there, the light's on. And hi guys, it's Alan. New managing moderators can support your channel in even more ways. Okay, close. Thank you. Nice to meet you, moderators. Again, Alan, target individual, or Havana syndrome. If you want to say Havana syndrome, because a lot of these programs that are government run are things that it's not just one program like Havana syndrome. They have the directed energy weapons, the DEWs, but it also works with the brain-computer interface. Like when Elon Musk has the brain chip that helps people that are handicapped. It's a wonderful thing, a wonderful cause for that to help handicapped people. But sometimes, as Robert Duncan would say, and I think in his interview with Len Baer, is that sometimes that the government will ask for there's a civilian purpose and a military purpose. How can you use this in a negative way, in a painful way against our enemies? And that's where they use that same telepathy into artificial or synthetic telepathy, like target individuals or V2K. Hearing just negative words. For Havana syndrome, they were saying crickets. I have one channel, CBS, I believe. They were saying that the Havana syndrome people were hearing messages, a negative message over and over. Voices, hearing voices, a negative message being repeated. So like human, not just crickets, not just tinnitus. But I only have one video of that. But it's on my playlist, on my YouTube, Alan Brewer Nielsen. And but it is so negative, the V2K, and it's a psychological to see if they can get a person to off themselves or to shake their confidence to do something criminal, illegal, stupid to get him in trouble or to kill himself. And I would never believe that from the people where I came from, ever. I always thought these were genuinely good people. I just believed that. I lived there most of my life, but I have lived since 15, 16, just going through this side pain, and I never would have believed or dreamt that these people were capable of knowingly going along with a torture program from the D.E.W or Darpa, call it whatever you want, because they're little mad scientists. It's for defense. It's for a good cause normally, to find a new technology to protect Americans, so they say. There's like 200 or so employees there in Alaska or the Antarctic, and a bunch of scientists, and they use that brain power to think up new and weird and wild ways to defend our country with new technology. But some of those things are just, they test it out on regular people who've done nothing wrong to anybody. They view us as ants, little guinea pigs. Like they're in an airplane, they see other people down on the ground. They're so small, they're like ants. They view other human beings as not nearly as important as them, the murderers, the scientists who think up ways to murder people. And they're very smart, obviously, but to use that intelligence, and I certainly don't wish to piss them off, but, it's just, I have spent my life never pissing off anybody. And yet they still did this to me when I was like, who knows, 15, 16, 17, it started my teenage years. But I never would have thought ever that it was a directed energy or, that they would do something like that, or that our government, it took years before I even found out about MK Ultra. But a lot of the teaching, the negative teaching, and subliminal, Whether you believe that stuff, it works, it does work. And if they raise the volume a little higher up, it becomes V2K, voice to skull. I don't know what the K stands for. If it's German or for control with a K, or to kill, voice to kill. But it's the whole part is to see if a person withstands constant negative bombardment, barrage of negativity and chest pain and they can kill you at any time. They hope that you help them through that by doing it yourself. And of course, they get grant money. Hospitals and doctors and city hall and law enforcement, I guess, get grant money for trying it out on their unsuspecting citizens, even children, even young adults, old adults. Can you imagine breaking your arm or delivering a baby or something, or going in for a routine something, and they have to open your arm or your leg or a small little insert? Maybe you're getting Botox, and while you're under, they put something else in there, and as a torture device, because the doctors don't get enough money, obviously. Anyway, it's they literally view you less than the dogs. PETA they protect dogs and animals, and it's a wonderful thing that they do. And you'd think people would have enough. There's enough laws in here. There's enough laws from the Nuremberg going after the Nazis. And you would think that would be enough. And they know there's enough laws that prohibit it, but they do it anyway. And then the lawyers pretend that there's a new type of technology, so the laws haven't caught up to the technology. No, the laws are there. They're already in place. Torture is always wrong, illegal, and it's always been illegal and wrong. And the idea of reintroducing, making it illegal, it's already been illegal. It's these things have already been, and it's to the heart and soul of every human being, and they know it. They just want to find some technicality, lawyer talk, the small print, so that they hopefully can get their money through poisoning and torture and not end up in prison. They know everything they're doing, and yet they'll end up in church, going to church and drain the swamp, the whole bit. And I grew up, again, I always thought the people were pretty nice. I thought I had no enemies, and I thought they were pretty nice. I just constantly had that side pain, and for 30 years didn't know. Anyway, a lot of the negative teaching kind of reminds me of, there's a very peaceful religion out there called Jain, Jain, Jainism. And some of the most wonderful people, peaceful. They even carry, the monks and nuns will carry a little broom to sweep the ground so that they won't accidentally step on an ant or a bug. When you're raised Christian, you literally think, well, Christians are some of the best people, and I was raised with that too. But sometimes if you take your Christianity, or you're sensitive in nature, so you try to be good to everyone and try not to be rude or mean to anybody. But it's a hard way to live too sometimes. Being nice, and what would Jesus do, and what would do unto others, you would have them do unto, that type of do unto others. And but there's other people of other religions, like Jainism, where they will not just treat other people well, treat them well, but they'll do that to animals. They won't hurt animals. They won't step on bugs. Sometimes, they won't even eat some vegetables because they grow underground, and it's part of like killing. It's a live fruit or a vegetable, so they believe it's wrong too, because it's killing or hurting a life, even though it's a not a human or an animal, but it's a life. So I don't know about like bacteria, if it's okay for them to kill a virus or a cold, because technically those are alive too, but they're lives that are bad because they're killing you and bacteria is killing you. Anyway, only the most fanatical, I'm reading into it, but anyway, it reminds me where you get that kind of level of shame and guilt over eating, um, not being perfect. Be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect, Jesus would say. Well, it's like if you're raised a Jain, you feel bad for eating a radish or a potato. Guilt. Um, but sometimes if you're raised Christian and just like you can be made to feel guilty because there's only one verse in all of the New Testament where really it's like where you can stretch it to make there's verses like, unless a man hate his life, he cannot follow, unless you carry your cross and, you know, um, that kind of, those who lose their life for my sake will find it. It's like, about picking up your cross and a lot of picking up the cross. And it can be almost a bit, forgive the term, but masochistic. It can be anti-self, guilt-inducing, be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And if you're always trying to remember every verse and trying to do what this says, that says, sometimes you just want to have a beer and or a cigarette, just go, fuck it, just because. And then you realize not only did this type of way of a teaching. I remember when I memorized the Sermon on the Mount in 9th grade, 8th grade, and those 3 chapters, and then chapter 10 and chapter 12, but so it's like if you don't live up to it, then you're kind of. But it's just you can put guilt on yourself, and just but that happens to a lot of people. But Jains can do that too over stepping on a bug, or running over, stepping on something, not sweeping the dirt enough, and anyway. So sometimes it's just nice to realize, oh, it's not just our religion that has that. It's a human thing where it's like Freud would say there's a life drive, a drive towards life, or a sex drive, but then there's almost an instinct towards that can be negative. And sometimes it can be whether it's you got to choose life and choose, pro and positive, but sometimes if you have a negative religion, it's like a person's theology becomes their psychology. If they have a negative theology about God or religion or the after or something, then it'll affect not just their theology will affect their psychology. And you can see this in the different of cultures, like in Israel and Judaism. There's, I don't know if it's 15 or 16 or 17 million people in the whole world. 16 million. Small amount of people, 16, 17 million. And for every one Jewish person, there's 100 Arab Muslim people. So it's like 1.7 billion Muslims. And yet the culture and how they're raised and how the religion has made it to where 1 out of every 4 Nobel Prize winners is Jewish. Now, I don't know if it's because their culture and their religion is positive in this world, or if the Nobel laureates have a prejudice towards, or a positive prejudice towards, Judaism and its scientists and thinkers, great scientists and thinkers, or if they have a biasness against Islamic scientists and teachers. I really don't know. But the culture and how people are raised, including their religion and theology, does, it affects people and it affects whole cultures differently. If the positive, look at it's like from the Amish to, A Mormon culture is going to be a lot different, than an Amish culture or a Muslim culture, or Orthodox Hasidic, what is viewed as right, okay, wrong. And then if you put a little, sprinkle some OCD in there and make it religious scrupulosity, OCD and religion, when you put those together, then it's all that perfectionism and guilt and shame all matched to get mushed up together. Anyway, it's good to watch South Park and just have a laugh at stuff and then have a beer. I don't drink anymore, but it's just to be able to laugh at some of this stuff. Anyway, an interesting thing to also understand is this program has a lot to do with in V2K and all that, and the negative stuff has to do with, it reminds me of being Scandinavian and Norwegian. And if you're raised in Norway or Scandinavian, there's something called Jante, the law of Jante or Janteloven. And it was made as a joke about 60, 70 years ago. It's like 10 laws of Jante. You should not think you're better than anybody. You should not think you're smarter than anybody. You should not feel that you could teach anybody anything. It's all this anti-self. Don't think well of yourself. Don't feel well of yourself. Don't think you can teach anything to anybody. Literally, it was meant as a joke in this writer's book like 70 years ago. But Norwegians and Scandinavians living there, they'll on one hand say they're some of the happiest people on earth, but if they talk about how oppressive Janteloven is and how it's a good community, it helps the community. But in every community, there's always people that think, well, I can be a leader and in this community. And so saying that I can lift myself and instruct and teach other people, and whether it's having power over people or I can help them, I have enough smarts and knowledge and I can help. It's kind of, Janteloven is this anti-pride, anti-ego, anti-selfishness. But the thing is, if you're not for selfishness, and selfishness is obviously, you hear the word and it's bad, but you can be anti-self, anti-selfish, to where it's almost masochistic. And if that goes with religion, like I remember the TV show House had a perfect episode of a guy who was so altruistic. He was giving all of his money, that he was rich and he hit his head or something. He was giving all of his money to everyone else's family and kids, but not his own. Because, well, why should I give my own kids something just because they're genetic and I have a love for them? I'm supposed to give it to everyone else, not my own kids. And just like this masochistic, because I'm gonna flog myself and my family because they're born of my kids and they're mine. So you got to have a positive view of oneself and even some selfishness without shame. That's a hard one to learn when you have scrupulosity. Whether you're Christian scrupulosity, Jewish scrupulosity, Islamic OCD scrupulosity, it's OCD with religion. And it's just OCD with religion. And it's Judaism, Christianity, Islam, could be Amish, could be anything. But it also reminds me of Norwegian or Scandinavian Janteloven, where the community is what matters, is the community, and not the individual. But the thing is, the individual can be so much taught to not be individualistic that it's almost masochistic. And there is now a movement in the last 10, 15, 20 years rebelling against this Janteloven stuff. Where, no, I'm damn, F you, I'm going to feel good about myself, and I'm going to say I can do whatever, I can do what I want, be whatever I want, and if I do become something or great or whatever, and I do end up, well, then great. And it's like the humanist viewpoint of I can become the highest of that I want to become, that I can become, and out of the abundance of that, then help people. Then become philanthropic. Um, but if you have a negative, but it's like, yeah, become the most of what you become, but don't become like the old idea of a Francis of Assisi, where they were, taking all their money and throwing it all, giving it to the poor and just becoming a beggar. Um, like the idea of monks and nuns in the Dark Ages, where they were living with no electricity, no lights, no, just a candle and no things of the world and all that. Anyway, I'm going off on little tangents here. Um, but it's important to understand that a lot of this teaching with V2K and its negative stuff, it's as a target individual, it's the same as Havana syndrome. Same technology, same zaps to the head, massive concussions and headaches for some people, or to the heart, directed energy weapons that are actually, they're called implantable. So in those movies where some wide-eyed person has a crazy look and I think the government implanted my tooth or implanted something in my skull, and yet they really are doing that. I mean, even Elon Musk has called it. It just freely admits now that they're helping handicapped people by putting a microchip in a skull to help somebody, a handicapped people. But the government, in order to give the grant money for these technologies, that's a civilian use. Now, what's the military use? So they got to use that technology for a harsh thing. And the harsh thing is V2K. It's using that same telepathy to harass people psychologically, to see if it harasses them, to make them do something violent, and getting shocks, and getting, it's not just crickets, it's negative messages. And that's why Elon Musk calls it telepathy. It's brain mapping. It was a DARPA thing, I guess, or a D.E.W, one of those. Brain mapping. And then they're so in real time that they can see on a monitor, EEG, or it's EK, no, EEG, monitor computer. And just in real time, they can read what you're thinking. They're so up to date that that's how far advanced they are. And a person can hear them, that kind of thing. So it used, so I don't know how psychologists and the DSM is going to do that when it comes to things like schizophrenia. If people start saying they hear voices, because that technology does exist now. And I think they're going to, Robert Duncan said that the military is going to come out with this in 2025 in his book, Project Soulcatcher. So hopefully they will come out with this. Anyway, look up Jaunteloven, or the Law of Jaunte, Jaunte, and see what you think. And also the religion of Jain, Jain, Jain or Jainism, and see how that, just the lengths they go to their idea of being good or holy in their religion. Not taking a broom and making sure not to sweeping the dirt floor so you don't step on a bug, and not, eating an apple because it might kill the apple, or something, even fruit and vegetables. So it's kind of a different way of viewing things. It's like, oh, it's not just those religions can be guilt inducing too. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to go make my mom some dinner. Bye-bye.